but that's the first thing you think of. What's wrong with me? And or somebody's playing a joke.
Right.
So that was the instance of what I call the hand instance, which a hand came, what I thought resembled a hand, even though it wasn't. And so I thought maybe my imagination was playing with me. I don't know, but it was real. It did happen. And I try to rationalize it, but I can't put anything rational to it, so it doesn't make sense. And to me, even now. But I knew I was awake. It wasn't a dream. And why didn't I wake my sister? I was afraid to move. And that was the thing that really got me, is the fact that fear was that much, and I jerked the blankets up, and it wasn't a dream. A dream has that surreal quality of not being able to, focus in, but on the apparatus or whatever you're focused on.
Right.
I could see the whole room, and it was real, and I was cognizant because I had not totally fallen asleep. And I was thinking of getting up and doing something. And, or at least I was awake and could not sleep. I don't know what that is. I don't know if there was any paranormal incidents
in that house,
but
maybe?
I do know it was not a living creature.
Do you know of any other times where anything happened back in that house where this hand, where you saw this black hand? It was a black hand too, correct?
It was black. It wasn't a hand. It was something like a hand with a mitten on it.
What do you mean?
It looked like that.
A hand with a mitten, like a baseball glove or something?
Well, no. You know how you could just wear like a black sock and put over your hand?
Yeah.
Now there was no arm or anything on it. It was just this black blob that looked like it was moving like that. That's only my description.
Interesting.
Because it was black and it looked like cloth, but it really wasn't. It could have been fur for all I knew, but there was no. It wasn't moving like a rat or a creature. It was just scraping it like it had fingers and digits in a glove pulling forward.
Towards your sister.
It was just like a mitten. No fingers identified.
Towards your sister.
Yeah, going towards my sister and me. So my sister was between me and the edge of the bed, of course.
Okay.
And when she moved her leg and she kicked it, and it fell off the bed and did not come back up, as far as I knew. And I stayed awake quite a bit after that because I was frightened. And then I fell asleep, and I was quite happy that morning came.
And you never saw it again?
No, I did not see it again. And I never heard anything on the carpet, although I was always listening after that. And I thought it came from under the bed.
Have you ever talked to your family? Have you talked to anybody about this? Or
I didn't ever mention it to them.
Because they might have seen the same thing and never mentioned it to anybody.
That's possible. That's possible. And I agree, that might have been, but I was too afraid even to talk about it.
Sure.
It frightened me very seriously. And it made me so nervous and everything. I didn't want to go to sleep, and I was sitting there getting closer to my sister, hoping it wasn't going to come back, and looking around, making sure it didn't come up on the other side, or maybe it was coming to the other side. But my impression was it came from under bed.
Interesting. Which you do hear a lot of stories about, creatures under people's beds and stuff like that.
My son told me of one, which most likely was explainable by a person next door trying to scare him, and that made more sense. And he was young too. He was about probably 5 or 6 at the time.
And you were about how old when you saw this black blob?
Oh, 5 to 6 years old.
Interesting. So about the same age.
Yes. And one of the things that was the only surreal, what I considered possibly paranormal. I don't qualify it as that at all. I don't even say that it was not a creature, but I didn't see any eyes, ears, or I couldn't, in my mind, even though I'd seen creatures, rats, all kinds of animals, and was taught what things are, ears, eyes, and all of that, I didn't see anything that, and it confused me. I go, what is it? And because of that, it frightened me terribly, because it had no eyes, and it just made a slight scraping noise as it was scraping on the bed.
How big
and
would you
I was
say?
awake before, it happened. Nobody came in the room and did anything. There was nobody in the room except my sister and I.
Okay.
And I had been awake. I hadn't dozed off and then awakened to it. It was something I just couldn't go to sleep. It was kind of like I was dozing. I had my eyes open just trying to go to sleep. And that's when it started, when I heard this scraping on the carpet before I went to sleep.
And this blob was about the size of what, like a basketball?
Of my fist size, 4 or 5 inches across.
Like a baseball.
Maybe 3 or 4 inches, maybe 5, in length.
Interesting. Okay.
And I don't, to this day, I always think back to that day and I go, what was it? Because I remember it very vividly, but I can't quantify it even now in my adult life going, but what was it? It didn't have eyes. Maybe it was something paranormal. Maybe it wasn't. Maybe it was, but what could it be though is something I can't define. It's, to me, is unidentified as to what it was. Now, if it was paranormal, it was something designed to scare me. If it was. And I do not say that it was or that it wasn't. It's just an experience at 5 years old. You kind of have to deal with a child's imagination and a child's mentality and the fear factor. But I didn't take my eyes off it. I didn't close them. I didn't try to get under the blanket. Try to get closer to my sister. I wanted to pull the blankets up, but I couldn't, kind of. It's like I was frozen looking at it. Kind of intrigued, but fearful.
Interesting. And she just kicked it, and it just kind of...
Yeah, she was still asleep, and she turned her head and moved, and then her leg shifted. In other words, she had her leg bent. She straightened it out, and boom, it just hit it, and it flew off the bed.
Wow.
And I heard it crawl away. Or crawl under the bed. I don't know where it went. I have no idea where it came from or where it went after.
But you heard it. You did hear.
Oh yes, I heard it hit the floor.
Interesting.
And I heard the movement for a little bit, but it didn't continue like it was in a long scraping going out the room or anything. I heard it for a little bit, so it's an assumption on mine that it went under the bed or went back to where it came from. Maybe it was a portal, if there was such a thing that was there. I don't know. But it, like I said, that was one instance that, as a child, I never forgot it. And then what followed after that, my sister carried me to a movie when I was a little bit older, probably about 6 and a half, getting close to 7. And it was called The Hand. And this was after it. And this was gloved. And it was like a hand that was going around killing people. And it didn't look like that. I thought, no, it's not that. But that scared me again because it reminded me of that incident.
Wow.
And it was one of those things that I still vividly remember, like I say. It just, one of those events in your childhood when you have them that is almost movie quality weird that you just can't forget as I describe it now.
Yeah, for sure. Was there anything else with this blob, this blackness that you
No, there was no smell.
No smell.
There was no any other noises, and nobody in the house. It didn't wake my sister. My sister didn't wake up, but there was no feeling like she couldn't have awakened. She moved. She was perfectly cognizant, it seemed, but she was just shifting in her sleep. And I didn't notice, like I say, smell or any other sound other than that crawling sound. And that was it. And I was trying to look to see if it might have been a rat had gotten in or something, and within no rat. It was not an animal. And I thought, that's weird. I couldn't speak or scream either. I was frightened, but I was scared to scream, thinking it might hurry and get to me and try to do something. I wasn't sure.
But it moved slowly, would you say?
Well, yes, it was moving as though if you were to imagine it as a hand, and you put your fingers in a sock, ultra black sock, and just scraped and pulled your hand forward across the floor. Simple as that. That's how it moved.
Very interesting.
Yeah, and to this day, I think back. It'll come across my mind occasionally, and I try to think of anything that I can possibly conceive of that it could have been. And it wasn't a person because there was nothing connected. It was just an independent. It moved independent, and it wasn't an animal in a sock, although it appeared to be as I recall, could have been just loose skin from what could have been, but it just was frightening. It was black. It was moving towards my sister and I, and it moved like a hand, and it was scraping the carpet and then crawled up. It gripped its way up, but it didn't have any legs or arms or anything like that. So it was perplexing to me. Being 5 years old, things are scary for a kid especially at night. And your imagination can play with shadows, but this wasn't a shadow. This wasn't a light or darkness play. It was something moving up on the bed, and that was kicked off and made a noise when it hit. But the strange thing, again, like I said, is that no legs, no arms, no eyes. And I didn't know what its purpose was. I didn't understand it all. I was just wondering why was it there and what was it.
How much power would you say that it took for your sister to kick this thing? Was it just like a minimal? I'm trying to figure out how much this thing might have
it
weighed.
wouldn't have been a lot of force. She just moved her leg, and her leg was under the blanket, and it just swept over, not super fast. She just moved like you would move in the night, like moving your arm or switching your leg just by moving it from like bending your knee and then stretching it out. That's all it was.
Okay.
And it wasn't a high force. So it would have actually been a very, not a powerful kick. She wasn't kicking. She just moved her leg.
So this would have been the first time that you've dealt with something like this, something strange, something
strange. Unexplainable.
Unexplainable,
yeah.
Exactly.
That was the first one for me, yes.
Yeah, and that's a big one. That's a big one, and I think the importance of this one here is that I've never heard of anything like this. I've never heard of a dark presence, and maybe somebody listening to this has, and maybe they can help us and say, hey, I've seen that same thing, or I know somebody who's seen this same thing or something similar. I'd love to document whatever this thing is, to try to document it as much as possible.
There was one other incident, and I just now thought about it on Brewster Drive. I remember being on the bed, and this was on my side of the bed, and this was on Brewster, not on Denison. And
this is
there
later.
was something that looked like balloons on the right side of the bed. I remember sitting there looking over the bed, and like a balloon would come up and go back down. It was kind of like a balloon, like a balloon with a knotted point where you blow it up and you have them tie it off in a knot. It kind of looked like that. That's what I thought. And I thought if it touched me with that little knot, it would make one on my arm or my body. That's what I thought. As I looked at it, it went up and down for a little bit and then was gone. And that was the only other incident that came up.
And that was
as far as something that I saw. And I didn't feel afraid of this. There's no fear. And that was the only other thing and I was probably about that time 4 at the time. I was a little younger than the other incident.
Okay.
And so it was that time period where being in that young age where things can look really weird. And my sister didn't have any balloons or anything like that. There were none in the house or anything that I saw before. And and not that I would have known everything, but they didn't blow up or put up any balloons in the room, so there was nothing there. And then when I woke up in the morning, there was nothing there, and I was afraid to look under the bed. I would never go under the bed.
Yeah,
I think children have a natural fear of things when they hear noises or think something's under the bed. The only fear that comes is something's coming to get me.
Yeah, and don't look.
And that's why they make movies about that. And even to this day, I'll be sleeping and I'll hear the cats or a thump and everything. The first thing I think of, what's under the bed? And I have to overcome a slight fear of looking under them. Check under the bed. The cats are messing around. But there's still a primal fear that I carry, I think, because of those instances where this has occurred.
Do you sleep with the light on?
No. I'm not afraid of the dark. At this stage in the game, I am unafraid because of the faith, the Father, and the gift of the Spirit. As I told you before, when I was in Alameda, that instance when I thought I was kicking the cord to my phone, and I had a little lamp on. I was just dozing after reading or something, and I saw the lamp move. I thought, oh man, I'm seeing something, or maybe there's a rat in here. I jumped up, saw a rat's near a mouse, and the cord was jerking, and it had stopped. And I thought, okay, where's the mouse? I ran through the room, looked at it, oh man, it must have ran out, or it's not in here. And then I said, well, nothing like that. And I was looking right at the cord, and then it jerked again real hard. And I looked, and I went, and it was plugged in. I was going, and the end of the cord was inside. I go, I didn't see that, Father. Oh, that's that. Oh, yeah, you're playing tricks on me. Leave me alone. And I went to sleep. So that occurred. That was the only bed type of incident. But that was when I was working with a friend of mine, which I won't mention his name. He's prominent in the scientific, well, in one part of it anyway. And he works with a major medical thing. And he was having night terrors. And I prayed with him about it. He said, can you confront it with me? I go, no, I don't need to do that yet unless it gets weird. I'm not into confronting things unless it's necessary.
Yeah.
If it's not necessary, all you got to do is read the Bible, start following the Word. He'll take care of things. I'm not one to do that. I'll pray for you, yes. And I did. And he said it got much better. He said his father, his sister, and himself had night terrors, and it did diminish with him following that regimen.
Night terrors. Well, yeah, and that's definitely the most powerful thing. That would be the way to confront these things.
Because he had apparitions.
Okay.
He actually saw things at the end of his bed and beside him, and he would be frozen. And this is not sleep paralysis. This is waking up. And when you wake up, you come out of that.
Did this person think that it was tied into his job, or was that totally separate?
That was separate.
Okay, just curious.
And this was family. This was something that was attached in the family that started with the father and passed to the daughter and the son.
Gotcha.
And so I identified that after talking with him as demonic manifestation or oppression. So I said, look, I don't need to do anything here. It's something you need to do. And I said, you need to get in the Word and pray. If then you get in the Word, then you can, by faith, go, Father, you rebuke that. And I told him to do that. I said, don't you get in to say, I rebuke you in this. I said, don't do that. You don't want to get into a spiritual war or taunt them. What you want to do is ask for the Father's guidance and then put it in His hands and then work through the Word to distance yourself from them.
Does it make you a little nervous about these, they call them actually, they're mediums, and it seems like they're actually trying to talk with these evil spirits, and they can create a lot of damage, a lot of
Well,
problems.
actually, they're very problematic. People who are mediums and doing these seances and banishments,
Because they're not always
and especially
Christians
when
either.
it has an appearance of working.
Okay.
Because some people have come in and they'll do the medium thing and say, we've done a cleansing. Now,
Right.
sometimes that works. Sometimes they experience no more events after that. And
can you
yes, go ahead.
explain the difference? Can you explain the difference, in your view, between a medium and let's say a priest or someone who has faith that can actually cure a person of these demons?
Well, the first thing we have to realize, it is not of men. It's impossible for men to do this. That's been proven scripturally, and I can refer to the Jews who were following after the apostles and went, they ran across a man that was demon possessed, and they said, "We adjure thee by the God of this, and depart." They said, "Well, Paul, we know. By the God of Paul, we command you to live." He says, "Yeah, Paul, we know. And yeah, we're aware of that, but who are you?" In other words, you have no power in that. You're trying to equivocate and come in a power that you don't even carry. So guess what? You're at our mercy. We're not at yours. And they chased them and beat them and stripped them naked and chased them away.
Wow.
So people who get into this thinking that they're something better be careful, because if you do not understand what you're dealing with, in this case, demons, which are disembodied spirits from judgment that are cursed to be upon this earth. Then there's the angelic realm, the fallen angels, separate thing. And these things are covered in Scripture, but a lot of people are not as knowledgeable. There's people even in the faith of Messianic, Nazarene, and everything that deal with it that have a lot more knowledge and have written booklets on it, which I wouldn't go by, because that's a man. I'm going to go by the Word, because that's what's protected me. It protects you. It protects your family. When we begin to use our own resources, then those have to work. And the demons know what's real and what's not. They don't need any explanations. They see and know based on how you act and what you say and how you behave, what you believe and who you're connected to. They know if the Father is with somebody or not. They need no they need no guidance as to finding out. They know immediately.
And they fear them, or they steer clear from those followers, you would say.
Well, not necessarily.
They might come after them more.
It depends on the past of the person, because if they were involved in stuff in the past, that could open up the will of the Father to chasten them with that. We could say it that way. No, you have no power. And once you were saved, you were protected from them taking over and destroying you. But if you step into sin again, then it opens the door for them to mislead you or harm you in the way that they are able. In other words, if you play with the Ouija boards and you're a believer, well,
dangerous.
Most likely you won't get possessed, but you could be afflicted by it or oppressed.
Yeah.
And end up dealing with a oppressive spirit, where it's a feeling of depressing all around you all the time. And you think you got to go to a doctor because you're depressed and all this, but it's really an oppressive spirit that drags your thoughts down, darts of darkness and melodramatic thoughts of your past. Oh, I'm so, because we can easily do that. And if we're not having success in our life, we can say, "Oh, my mom," or and this happened. That's just an escape. It is nothing true with what the ability of human spirit to overcome with the power of the Word and the living Spirit of the Creator and the Son.
Do you think that priests that there are some priests, and maybe not just priests, but the only stories I hear.
Exorcist. Let's state the obvious here. There's a movie based on a true event in the 40s called The Exorcist. Most people are somewhat aware of that movie. And it was really dealing with a boy who was placed in the hospital. And they dealt with a spirit that was actually using that boy's body as a tablet to write messages in his flesh with whelps on his body, and speaking through him to the priest. A couple of priests were not able to deal with it. They had no power. But one came finally, and he was afflicted a little bit in dealing with this spirit. He got cut. There was lots of bad events surrounding this. They had to keep the young man strapped with leather straps to the bed, and yet he still broke free with the right hand due to great strength and grabbed a spring and ripped the arm of one of the priests dealing with it. This is the reality that we deal with. Now, there are those who do run into what I call the people of bliss that will not deal with these things. There are people who say, oh, that's false. None of this really happened. It was just a psychotic individual. Well, the problem is that this young boy was speaking perfect Latin to the priest, and he had never studied Latin. I don't think the boy could have taken a quick crash course in that hospital possessed and speak Latin. He spoke it so well, and not in his voice. So it was another intelligent spirit. Just like he has a spirit and fills that body and speaks, that's what a spirit does. It fills the body as it was like the body is its host, its body. And then it speaks in its voice. So when these things occur, these are real. And the Father he knows these things. People say, well, why does the Father allow this? Well, first of all, we have to realize that we did it. It is our problem. We created the problem. He is the one that's dealing with it. And he allows these things to show us what, from our perspective, is unbelievable. It, quote, this can't, what's this? And it causes us to turn to him. And this was a happy, good student, based on a documentary I saw, a very good student, a very bright and obedient son. And then he started hearing things under his floor. And they found scratch marks under it, and they thought, oh, it's a rat. But it was not. It was a manifestation from an unseen spirit beginning to do the fear factor, because it must start with fear.
Was it something that the child brought on through fear? Was this thing attracted?
As far as in evidence, there was no provocation by the family. It was a Catholic family. No, wait, I misunderstood that. I don't think it was it went to a Catholic priest with the problem. I think they may have been nominal Catholics. I don't recall. But as far as the family and the mother and the father, they had their differences and disagreements. And the father did not believe it was happening, even though the mother and the son kind of believed it. He did not believe it. He did not accept it.
Did he believe in God? Do we know if who believed in God?
Yes, I believe he did, and it may have been that he did not. But the implication was they were a happy family, basically, and that they had an idea of God, at least. They were not atheistic as far as I could tell.
I mean, shouldn't
they did turn to the Catholics.
And shouldn't every Christian be open to this? I mean, it's in the Bible. Jesus.
Well, the fact
clearly,
is they should believe the word. Yes, right. I agree. They should believe the word, because Steve dealt with what many would have been saying today is a mental condition.
Which could be demons.
Which could actually be a demonic thing. And I run across people that I knew it was demonic and not a mental state. It was that they were controlled and operated solely by the power of demons. And I've run across this on the streets of San Francisco, and I've seen them personally. Plus, there was an incident which I was shocked because I thought it was urban lore, black-eyed children. And I was in San Francisco one day, was walking down Geary and turned up, forget what street, off of Geary. I was headed somewhere for a meeting with somebody, and I bumped into this girl. I was like, oh, ma'am, I'm terribly sorry. She had a hood on. It was cool. It was either January or February, right up in there. Maybe it was late December, but it was cool out. And she looked up at me, and she had totally black eyes. And I was looking at it. Are those lasers? And I said, no, they're just black. That's her eyes. And she covered herself real quickly and ran around the corner. And I was speechless for a second and looked, and she ran away. And she looks like the picture that they post on the internet of that girl with the short bobbed hair down to her jawline with black eyes, nearly exactly the same. And I thought, wow, that was scary. And I just thought, nothing. Either that's a hybrid person or something. I just run into something I don't understand. And I didn't tell anybody about it until I met with you and started talking a little bit with people of faith at you know where.
Sure.
In a control. And so I thought I'd just file that away and leave it as what it was. Happenstance that nobody would believe because this was a black-eyed person. I'd read about black-eyed children, but this wasn't a child. This is a full-grown adult. And so either it's a hybrid or one of the ancient children, as they would say, could not exist between angel and human, possibly, or as they say, the abduction children. It could have been that. And so,
is it also possible that maybe this person just had black contacts or something?
I was looking at that because the contacts would have to be huge and go all the way around because she kind of, her eyes kind of widened as she saw me like, oops. And I was looking and there was no edge, nothing.
It was all black.
To indicate that it was black all the way through. And I could kind of see in. Now, if there's, see, they have to be able to see through that. And you would be able to see some hint that, that was just some kind of glass or something that she had over. This was nothing like that. And her eyes were not normal, and she was frightened of me. A person that's doing that would be thinking they're powerful and going, I've got black eyes, and get this. She didn't act like somebody was wearing lenses to impress people or to get a reaction. I wasn't impressed like that. It was like she was high. Her head was down as she was walking. And I bumped into her, and her head went up, and that's when I saw her. Then she bowed her head down again. I only caught that glimpse. It was for about a second and a half. She bumped up and looked at me, and I recognized immediately. I going, oops. It didn't frighten me, though. And I was in faith. I said, ooh, wow. It made me intrigued, but I thought, I didn't believe they existed. That's what I kind of thought. I thought, at first it was shocking, and then I said, well, that's real.
But you've also you've also found other reports or other proof of this same type of person, of other people seeing a similar person?
Yeah, generally it's black-eyed kids. I call it the BEKs. I've heard fewer instances that I've seen that they say, yes, I've run across adults that are black-eyed. And when I read about the black-eyed kids, I thought, urban lore, somebody's just BSing. And that's really what I thought it was. I don't believe things that I read on the internet. As I told you before, when we were doing HeartTalk, I said a lot of this is internet and could be people, either government or just individuals, having fun, writing a story, a movie producer, or doing the Blair Witch Project style. Well, I blah, 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 and I blah, blah, blah. But they're too generalistic, and I generally don't believe about 99% of what I read on the internet. But I think there's a lot of people out there that are targeted for whatever reason for these things to be as they are. And it's the Father that allows them to happen. No, he doesn't send evil spirits to afflict people. except like with Saul, and when he rebelled against the will of the Father, then the Father said, I send the evil spirit to afflict you. And that's another story, and only the person involved would understand if the Father was involved sending it, and he would know why. It wouldn't be a errant spirit to say, no, let's afflict people. Generally, they don't do that because the Father has some restraint that he puts on that. Otherwise, the world would not function so well, I think.
Well, there's many of these sightings, of these alien sightings or the UFO sightings, whatever you want to call them. Many of them are actually tied into nuclear waste and nuclear weapons and nuclear stuff. And you've had your share. You know, you might know a few things about that, about the nukes and all that stuff.
Yeah, I worked on those types of things in the military. Not the Polaris. I dealt with things called Subrock, Mark 48s, and a few other things out there. And I studied Polaris, but I got out of that program because
what is Polaris?
That was the nuclear missile program.
Okay.
And I was on a nuclear submarine. And I'm not going to go into details or anything about that because I've been debriefed. And just for the sake of not national security, but according to my agreement with him, I can't really discuss anything about that.
Sure. And you know, we can always cut out anything if it turns out maybe we shouldn't talk about that. But there was one time where you were actually tested, right?
Oh, tested by my compatriots?
Yes.
I mean, about the torpedo tube thing?
Yes.
Oh, that, where I was locked in the torpedo tube and they started to pressurize it.
Yep.
Yeah.
Now,
that happened.
Can you walk us through that?
Okay. In the United States Navy, they had planned maintenance systems, which was inherited, I think, from the Air Force. The Air Force gave it up, and the U.S. Navy take it, as I understand, if I'm remembering correctly. I could be corrected on that. But anyway, I began a PMS of the torpedo tube. That means checking its operation, open, close. You have to clear with the captain, be sure if you're opening any kind of, outer, secure portal, like for the torpedo tube, and then close it up, and then cycle it, open the tube. And this is when I was underway, meaning we were submerged. And I go into the torpedo tube all the way down to the end, and to the opening hatch that went outside to where the torpedo would be placed and ejected by high pressure air into a atmosphere to start tracking its target. And so it was secure after I opened it up, and I went in there and I take a rag and grease and a little bit of elbow working. I clean and wipe down the tube and check for cracks, do an inspection of the tube. And I was cleaning that, and I was at the very end, and I heard laughter and some talk, and all of a sudden I hear the hatch shut and secure hydraulically. I go, oh, okay, they're going to have fun with me now. But then, the inevitable, it began to pressurize. And then, after they do that, they can open that hatch, and then, oops, I thought, I wonder if I've done anything to really piss off the captain or something's wrong, because really they can own you and claim it was an accident, and then they just write it off, and your parents get a lovely letter and maybe some insurance money, and then you're dead.
So if they would have opened that hatch, you would have went out into the ocean. Oh,
that would have been it. That would have been it.
Gotcha.
That would have been it. I would have been dead. No question. That would have been the end, because we were fairly deep, and I couldn't have just swum to the surface and, that was close. Wouldn't have happened. I would have been fish bait or fish food. And then I got through clean, so I said, either I'm dead or I'm alive. I don't know what's going to happen. So I just finished cleaning the tube, and when I got to the hatch going back into the torpedo room, I said, hi, guys. As soon as y'all are done, I could stay in here. I mean, it's pretty nice and comfy, and I could sleep pretty good. Or y'all could let me come out, and so you don't lose a worker. Otherwise, y'all are going to have to do all the work. And they opened it up, and they were kind of shocked. They said, You didn't freak out. You didn't lose it. You didn't, and they were shocked. And when I thought about it, I thought, oh wow, maybe I should have. Wow, that was kind of bad. I could have died, but I thought, hey, that was pretty good. They said, no, dude, you're fine. It might have been their check to see what my mental stability was like. But they didn't tell the captain, and I didn't run to the captain and go, they locked me in the torpedo tube, and I thought I was going to die. No, you don't do that in the military. You know, when you're initiated, you don't run and tell daddy, oh, look what they did to me. You just go, hey, that was pretty scary, but now it's kind of funny, too. You laugh it off and you move on. Hazing, as it is a right. And if you get hazed and go through it, that's a badge of honor. As much as today's people say, oh, that shouldn't be done, that's horrible. Oh, well, that's bullying that person. They're making him feel less than a man. Well, unfortunately, you go through it, women go through it amongst women in the job or wherever they go. Wherever you go, there's a time of proving your position. And I didn't, you know, and if the government would come and question me about that, I would say, hey, you went through it. What are you going to do? Make a law against testing the individual to see if he's capable of the job? Well, no, you can't really do that. You've got to be able to see that they can get through it. Because in war, it's going to be a lot worse than that. That was milk toast. You know, they could have started filling the tube. Hey, now that would have been a lot more. Then I would have gotten a little bit of duress. I would have been, oh crap. Come on, guys. I understand. There's a problem. Let's talk about it. I have my limits. But the reality is we all have to go through those things. And we shouldn't sit there. And I don't say that there's a line that you can't cross. There is always a line you don't want to cross. But under this circumstance, it was absolutely admissible. And no, it wasn't ordered by the captain. But the guys down in the torpedo room want to know what kind of person you are. They have to find out. And can he handle pressure? Well, I guess I handled that pretty well. And after that, I was, you know, I was then part of the crew.
So it was them testing you. It was a trust thing. They were trying to see if they could actually trust you.
Or if I'd run up and start complaining to the captain or tell the chief on them, and I didn't. Why? There's no harm, no foul. It was, for them, it was absolutely funny. It was a gas. And I'm sure if I would have been one of them, I would have been laughing too. Now, did I do that to anybody? No. That was not my forte. But just because they did it doesn't mean they did anything wrong. And I don't look at it as wrong, even at this time. It was just a thing that they did. I think, one, it might have been started out as a joke. But then it became, when you do that, it becomes a little bit more than what you expect. You find out what a person is made of, so to speak. And I was, when I got out and laughed with them, I guess at work I thought, okay. Then I went and got some coffee and I forgot about this thing. Kind of just went on with my life. But that crew took care of me. They were good to me. And from the nukes on the back, you know, I was a goof off at times, and I had to pay the price on that. Everybody had a little goofiness, I guess. But I consider myself a low man. I was told even when I was E5 and doing all my work fairly proficiently. And the chief, you know, gave me a kind eye. Chief Kaikas, he was a hard butt, and he wasn't a believer. He thought God was a myth and everything else. I had to endure that. But so that was a good time for me, though, and it prepared me for even up until today. And events that happened in the Oakland Hills, and even the events in Texas as I moved here, it has strengthened me, definitely.
Well, let's kind of talk about that, because they gave you one last test, and I don't know exactly when in your timeline that last test came, where they just paid you a visit to make sure that you didn't.
Ooh, now that's the Men in Black, real ones, not the mythical ones. The men, however, let me put it that the one that I call mythical are probably real, but they're not the ones that came and visited me. These were human beings.
Okay, gotcha. That's a big, big difference.
Yes, and these were federal agents. The NIS, Naval Investigative Service. You've heard of Naval Criminal Investigative Service, NCIS, which is the show, but there's a real component to that, of course. The Naval Criminal Investigative Service and the Naval Investigative Service, which they did come and visit me. And the curious thing is, I had moved and left no forwarding address, i.e., but they still found me.
How?
They knocked
How is
on
that possible?
Because, let me put it this way. Once you're out, after you've been in positions of being around nuclear documentation, and I mean, I had the documentation for nuclear weapons, and it dealt with everything. And I was in Polaris, and I had knowledge that, some of it is still cognizant with me, but I bury it and forget it, and I don't want to remember it. And this is part of life for everybody that's been in the service, short or long. You're dealing with highly sensitive classified information about operation of weapons, and that is highly classified. The only thing that's more classified is the unidentified flying objects and deep underground military bases and the things that they put in those places, which are definitely different, which will lead on to another subject, which I'd like to bring up in a minute. But that final test, they came out and said, oh, you lost a document. Actually, it was a booklet. It was training that had all the details about things. And I said, oops, no, I turned it up to this person at this date right after, and they signed it back in. And they wouldn't have let me go had I not turned everything in. They said, oh, you're right. Huh, okay. Thank you, Mr. Woodler. And they left. But there were two of them. They wore glasses, and as I remember, and they didn't take them off. They didn't sit there and try to be smug or arrogant. They just said, hello, we're here and we need to talk to you. We have this problem. The problem is, they described it. I answered, and they said, thank you very much. And I said, hey, if you need me, come back. We'll work it out. And then they left, and I never had to deal with them again, as far as I know. And but there were some strange incidents at family radio that, not at family radio, but at the job that I was working there. And when I was walking to work one time, I was almost killed.
Yes, tell us about that.
Well, no, I was just getting. I always like to take the bus and get coffee at the Starbucks there over at the new Starbucks, or it was then, over there on Hagenberger. And it was over there by Walmart. I'd got my coffee, and I was walking in Saturday morning, and I bought a paper, and I was walking, and I heard an engine gun, and really loud. I'm going to go, what in the world? And I moved my paper to look at the street, and there was a security truck aiming right for me. And a guy sitting there looking right at me. He said he fell asleep. I didn't see him look very sleepy as he was there. And I jumped out of the way, and he hit one of those new poles that was made of iron, and it crumbled to pieces. Fortunately, it didn't hit me, but he jumped out and said, oh, I fell asleep. Oh, I fell asleep. I went, okay, no problem. You okay? He goes, yeah. I checked him, and he was walking, talking, and didn't have any injuries. Just the truck was kind of messed up, and I thought, I'll go. This was before I had a cell phone, so I said, I'll go in there, I'll call some help. Before I could even get there was some that called, and police and people got there, and nobody called me. I left him my number. I said, if you need me, give me a call. But if I hadn't looked up, he was dead on me. I would have been dead right there.
Yeah, but
I was reading a paper, and I would have never seen it coming.
Well, you had also told me that the way that he looked, like after this had happened, once he realized that he hadn't hit you, he had a certain facial expression, right?
Yeah, he was kind of shocked. He looked like, whoa. When I was walking up saying, "Are you okay?" And I don't know if it was basically he was trying to hit me or if he was just surprised that he missed me. I don't know. But he would have seen me directly. And the thing is, if you fall asleep and you drift off. Your foot doesn't actually gun the, it doesn't just gun the gas. And that's what I heard. And I thought, that's odd. Falling asleep, you drift and you just kind of, you'll drift over and bump the curb and everything. And the speed limit was only 35, 40 there. And he fell asleep, and I just didn't think that made sense to me. And I thought, wait a minute. I think, and I thought, nah. He wasn't trying to zone in on me. I know that. Couldn't be. I had discussed some things with people about 9/11 and some stuff, and I thought, no, I'm not public. There's nothing like that. I know it's not true, and I know kind of about that and about certain other things in government. I thought, no, I don't think anybody put a hit on me or anything. But that came up in my mind, and I dismissed it immediately. And I don't believe that happened.
Well,
I just think the man was kind of in shock.
But this was all after September 11, 2001.
Yeah, it was.
And this was after you had been vocal about the fact that there's no way that those twin towers could drop.
I didn't make it public. I just spoke to a few people saying, I don't believe this. And I looked at, the events after the dealings, and I kind of agreed. I thought, how could that happen? Buildings don't fall like that if they're hit by planes, unless you have a demolition. And I thought, well, who demolished it? Who did they have that set in there, preset to do that? No. They don't do that with buildings. They don't preset explosives. That doesn't make sense. That would be stupid. And I just thought somebody somewhere set this up. And it had to be somebody in the government or highly skilled to get this accomplished. Because nobody in construction would do that unless they're paid a lot of money and or it was a government operation of some type, foreign or otherwise, in which my conclusion was it wasn't foreign for that to happen. It wasn't foreign. And I was very disconcerted by that. And in the military, I learned that our government is fractured, meaning there are those within it that want to oppose it and bring it down. And so you just have to deal with it. There's a guy called Alinsky that, current Hillary Clinton dealt with. And he was definitely not an American patriot. And so no more than some of the people Obama was working with, or President Sotero. So I look at these things and I go, something's up. Part of our government is working against us. And it might be, and as I say, there's the 3-city flag and all of these different things that are working against the world. And then recently, as I told you on the phone, which I won't mention here, about certain bases, which we said, and I'm not even going to mention the number, you know what I'm talking about. I said, I'm not going to mention that. I'm not going to mention that. Not. Yeah, that is separate. Yeah, definitely that's a lot big. I think the world is ruled from a certain area, and that's it now. It makes a lot of sense now. Where do the marching orders come from? How come it seems like it's all fascist-oriented? And then I got it. I went, oh, my goodness. And after doing some reading and looking around, I went, oh, my, that's very interesting. And I'm not going to tie it together in the way I have it tied together with the public. If anybody's going to find out, they have to find out on their own, because I'm not going to be airing out my understanding that I have now seen based on the evidence. I went, whoa, it floored me. As I told you before, it fell into place, and I went, no, that fits too neatly. That's scary.
Well, sure, but isn't it all tied in? I mean, isn't everything that we're seeing happening? It's all tied in.
Oh yeah, yeah, and pre-planned, as you well know.
And pre-planned.
Yeah, all of this is pre-planned, and they think they're wise at doing this, and they put it right in front of our face. But we knew about it before they started.
Right, but the whole thing is there's some people that think that this is all pre-planned by humans, whereas a Christian might think that this is all pre-planned by the devil.
Well, let me put it another way.
Okay.
All of this was foreseen and known of the Father. He has allowed them and given them the power to do it. No, it isn't him sending them. He said, okay, do it. But in that, he has provided salvation for his people, even though they're working to give power to Satan and his emissaries. All of these New World Orders, and anybody in the military knows that these spirit beings or these aliens are not from other planets. They're interdimensionals, as they call them. Meaning, they're just in another dimension. Oh yeah, from the realm of the heavens and angels. And they won't call them angels. There are evil spirits that are not angels that deal with, but there are then those angels that are cursed in the earth. They call it Tartarus. And that could be the North Pole issue, where there's an underground, inner earth civilization. I agree that that's very possible and most likely is true. And that saucers or flying apparatus come out of there and will move about the world. And I don't know totally that Eisenhower made an agreement with them, but I think that Germany did, and I think eventually they may have had done that with the United States. And this is a deal with the devil, so to speak, although they wouldn't look at it that way. If they had any understanding, they'd understand what was going on. And then these spirits would lie and say, hey, we came from this planet and we're doing this, and we need to save our species, and we need to have DNA and all this. And that was why the first world was judged with a flood, because of this deviation of evil that the Father saw, and how men's hearts were constantly on evil, even those that were still made in quote unquote the image. And then we had these hybrids, which were giants, and those who were totally evil and ruling over the people. You know, you see these ancient reliefs and ancient things where creatures with weird heads, animal heads, and all this kind of thing going around. You think, oh, that's just mythology. Well, maybe it wasn't, and maybe that's why the flood came, because the Father was judging man for his evilness and judging the evil one for trying to subvert with his seed, the seed of the woman and the seed of the serpent, and destroy that. But it said then afterward they returned after the flood. So we're dealing not only with giants, but the seed of Satan, which could be people who are demonically oriented, not by the choice or by exactly their decision, but by the line of which they're born into. And that kind of thing can be true, and it doesn't mean you'll be a giant or super intelligent even. It could have other implications. And I'm thankful, as I've learned in my life from family members, I had a Jewish father, so I have Jewishness, and I think, I'm not sure my mother on that side, so which is where it comes from, the Jewish congregations and why. So it would make me more like a Samaritan, I would guess. But I always wondered why I always loved beards, and I just wondered, and I think that's just a mark of your lineage, in the impression, not that you think, oh, I'm Jewish, I need to grow a beard, and I need to follow the law, the Torah, and that just doesn't happen. But I was raised in a believing household where they believed the word, and it was a engrafted family, meaning they were Goyim or they were not Jewish. They told me I had a Jewish father. Later on, I found out they didn't say Jewish. They just said, "Oh, you had a a nice dad. He wasn't a spiritually Jewish man who followed synagogue, as I understand. And if I met him, and I think I met him once, he definitely wasn't a synagogue Jew. But the thing is, being Jewish does not give you any advantage, and being of the nations outside of Israel does not give you any advantage. But what does is not that you know the name, as many people say, but does he know your name? Does he know you? Because that's where the salvation is, because he named a people for himself. And I know that my events that I went through were made to shape me and give me understanding. The events of being tested on top of the trails in the Oakland Hills, the event that happened in San Francisco with its black-eyed entity or person that looked human totally, outwardly, but except the eyes were definitely inhuman and not. And it could be something that the government produced or came from other sources. I don't know. And there's a lot of implementation of programs that nobody is aware of, except very few, in which you're creating hybrids. Tom Horn speaks of this, and very eloquently, and much better than I. And if anybody has any questions, you can look up Tom Horn and read the Bible. Now, the filter and the reference is the Bible, not Tom Horn, and Tom Horn would say likewise. So you have to filter what I say and everything through the Word, because whether I'm Jewish, part Jewish, or whatever, that makes me no authority, as was witnessed by the Savior when he went to Israel. They were totally wrong and misguided in their understanding and teaching of the Torah. And today we still have this. And even though a rabbi recently, he was 108 years old, I forgot his name, otherwise I'd say it here, had a revelation in the spirit, in either a dream or a vision, and where he met Yahushua, the Savior, who said, "I am he that died and was resurrected," and he left a letter that after he died was to be read, and he said, "The Savior has come. Our Redeemer has already come. He introduced me in this vision. He is the one that died and was resurrected." He testified to that. And I'm sure they kind of wrote that off. Some may have believed it. Some may have said, "Oh, he was old." I don't know how they received it in the Orthodox community or the ultra-Orthodox. And I don't know which camp he even fell into. But I posted it on my Facebook. That part, and I do try to tie the Jewishness to the Western faith where possible, but it is difficult and it's different. And you kind of knew me back then when I went through that change a little bit and described it. And it's an ongoing process where I'm learning things and avoiding the pitfalls, so that even though I identify to my quote unquote Jewishness, that I don't fall into a Judaizer type, which many will do. And it's not about being of the Torah and, yes, we're to follow it. It is not wrong. It is instruction, and we are to follow it. However, there is the Brit Hadashah, which is the New Testament, Old and New Testament, where it was a New Testament or a new covenant ratified by the Savior, just like it was with Abraham on the mount, and where he sacrificed, it was to be Isaac, but he said, "Don't do that." And he had a lamb caught in the thicket, and he sacrificed that, ordaining the covenant. And the new covenant was ordained in the same way, same mount, same place, and it was by the Savior himself. So we see that, and we can understand something's different in how we act according to the Word. It is via the Spirit, not the law, that we come into grace. And it came by the Son, who is one with the Father. And some people misunderstand me on my oneness. They think you're a modalist and all this, but I said, no, look what the word says, because the oneness shows itself in Revelation. I don't go with the Trinity thing, but I don't say there's no Trinity. But there is a demonstration of that I have seen that I go, this is curious. But the Father always says, I am one. He never says, I am three. And people say, oh, it's implied. No, he never says. If there's a statement and an implication, go with what the word says. And that's kind of how I ended up where I did. And I have a lot of people that disagree with me and say, oh, you're this. Okay, well, you can label me that. But I'm telling you, this is where I see it. This is where it's pointed out. But getting back to the points being military and then my events, the one thing that comes out for me is when I was tested, really, the first time where I had a paranormal experience was in the Oakland Hills. And I was hiking up there, and I was hiking down a trail, coming back to the Dunn Trail.
And this was about what year?
98, July. And my wife said I left and went on a hike, and she was looking outside and saw a small cloud in the sky that was growing a little bit. She said, oh, July, yeah, more fog coming. And she said it later came down on the hills, Oakland Hills, up where I hiked. And she said it was rather quick. She didn't say anything else about it after I questioned her about it. Because I said she was worried about me because I was coming back on the Dunn Trail. The wind kicked up really loud and swirling and dust, and it was getting really cold real quick. And then I heard laughter 360 degrees around me and above me, and I thought I was being joked on by some kids or somebody using, I worked in radio, so I was like, oh, somebody's playing a trick. And I said, okay, who's playing the trick? Nothing. After intense laughter, like about 100 voices of laughter, different octaves, different sounds, different levels, high to low, and everything.
Wait.
And then I thought to myself,
So you heard laughter? You heard laughter at this point?
Like many, many people laughing.
From different directions?
Yes. 360 degrees all the way around me, left, right, up, down, forward, and behind. And I thought, what is this? And immediately, my first response was the logic. Who's doing this? I spoke aloud and said, who is this? Who's doing this? All right, kids, come on. And I waited, and nothing. Just total silence, not even a sound. I thought, okay. And then I was confused, wondering which way do I go? How do I get home? And I had hiked that so many times, there's no way I can't know it. And I was right at the fork, and I was confused, utterly. Also, confusion is evil, the devil, or Satan, as they say. And it was foggy and kind of misty, and I turned around, and there was this fog, kind of like a wall of fog, and I was going to go into the fog. And there was an implication or an instance where the Spirit wouldn't let me do it. It was like, no, you can't go in there. And it wasn't in there, it was just fog. Maybe there was something wrong that I don't know, but I felt there was something in the fog. And I wanted to confront. Because the laughter, I'll go in there and I'll take care of this. But I was forbidden to do it. Then I said, okay, I'll just turn around and I'll go out this way. And immediately confusion, and I was not able to figure out. The more I saw it, the more lost I got. And I thought, am I going to get home? Am I going to die out here? I began to think like that. And it was raining and misty, and it was dark. And this is up in the Oakland Hills, so at night it's very dark, and especially with all the trees. And I was feeling myself tree to tree to find trails and everything. Eventually, I found the archery range, and I went, oh boy. Then I knew the way home. And as I came out of the brush, I saw a light, and I went towards that light. It's always the light that gets you out. But I went to it, and I came out. There were three guys smoking some weed. And I came out, and I had my, I had a Scandinavian-type wool cloak on, green. and I had my walking stick, a 3-pronged walking stick. And I walked out, and these guys just froze like they were dead. They were laughing and talking, and I thought I'd say hi, and I said, hi. And I came out of the fog, and they just froze, and they didn't even move. And they didn't say a word. I said, hi, hello. And they just kept watching me, and I walked past them, and I said, see you later, hi. Not a word. They didn't even move. And I thought, that's weird. And I thought, maybe they see something behind me. I don't know. And I thought, I'm not looking back. Look back, because I don't know what they're seeing, if it's me or if it's something else. So I walked, and I heard something crackling as I walked down that road getting back home. I heard something, and it scared me so much I started slapping my stick on the road. I went, okay, what is it? And like it was a warning, but I thought, whatever it is isn't scared of me. Or whatever it is stalking me. And I felt stalked. And then finally, when I got home, I was so glad to get home. I thought I had avoided a major problem or whatever it was. And there might have been something that had come down from the heavens and was trying to scare me. Well, it worked that time. The laughter and everything, I thought, well, in my confusion and being lost in the woods, where I hiked all the time and there's no way to be lost. I knew the archery range, I knew the way to that. And there was a tank up there, a water tank. I knew how to hike up there and go down to the park at Redwood Park, if you remember that park where we met those times. I knew how to hike there. That's where it occurred, up in the hills above Redwood Park, on close to the Dunn Trail. And I never had a fear of going back up there. But one thing I did, when I'd hike and get through and it got dark when I was hiking, I felt I was always watched very, very, very closely there. And then the instant where I saw an unidentified flying object and I was watching, it was like white balloons. And the guy that walked up past me said, yep, you're right. That's what it is. It's not, and we know here. And it's kind of what he told me, and he walked off. And I go, what?
White balloons.
I didn't solicit it from him. No, it just looked like balloons.
Mm-hmm. But
it was up there hovering above and I was trying to figure out. I was putting my binoculars on it, and I was looking at it, and going, what is that? It's just sitting there. It's not balloons. I thought it was balloons. You know how the Mylar balloons will fly around. But these were perfectly white. And I've seen, UFO things that have shown that kind of that same shape and form anyway. And I thought, well, that guy, whoever it was obviously somebody who worked in the community of not UFOs, but maybe it was government or something. And I don't know why he said what he said to me, but I said, well, it's time for me to go. I don't know what it is, but I'm curious, but I'm not that curious. Because that was freaky. So incidents in the Oakland Hills are plenty. And I'm sure many people have had some strange things that have happened to them up there. I think that place, is not haunted, but I think it's under the dominion of spirits that do what they do.
You think they're like in some caves? I mean, there's some weird caves
around
that
there's caves
area.
Up there that have been locked up. Yeah, there are. And that could tie into, Shasta, because there is an underground network, from what I understand, that maglevs and everything that can travel up to, I think, 600 something miles per hour. I have heard hearsay, that go from base to base and cover a lot of the bases. Fort Hood, for example, and the UFO crash in 47 that they had here and didn't say anything about, and that they have underground base here and they store it here. That I don't know if that's true or not, but I've heard tells of that. And there's a lot of choppers that I see fly over here that are unmarked and black. There's nothing new about that with the military. And they're the ones that will respond to a instant of interdimensional interaction. In other words, a UFO contacts the public, hits the public, it's really for public protection. It's not to hurt anybody, as I see it. And they're right to say there shouldn't be revelation, because what this means is it's the revelation of the fallen angels and them that wish to rule the world according to Satan, which is the New World Order. And I do believe those that are working toward this New World Order are going to be the first ones sacrificed. And I don't think they understand that, but they're going to go. And I remember looking into Rockefeller's place there in Monterey, and it was Rockefeller. I recognize that face. And he had a look of disgust for me, and maybe rightfully so. I don't think I deserve any smiles. But I do know that this coming world order, you can let it be talked of Henry Kissinger or any government official. You hear New World Order or global cooperation, and you see it effectively taking place when they remove leaders and countries and go in there to attack them. And based now, as I see it, coming from one source, which I described to you earlier this week, which I will not repeat, as I said. It's just one of those things that you know not to touch, in my opinion. So these incidents that have occurred with me from my youth to now, seeing black-eyed person, not a child, and realizing that it is not, as I thought, totally bogus and a made-up story or people playing pranks on other people. The black-eyed children, I think, are evil and are either entities or hybrids of some sort, and maybe even government style and not spiritual style. They could be that. I don't know. And nobody has gotten anywhere with that. And it's in the realm of Sasquatch, which they're out there. There's something to it. But what is it? Nobody can really find out. And everybody can form an opinion, but it doesn't have any bearing in truth, because you can't put any definitive understanding of what we're seeing or where they're coming from or where they go. But they always tie it to UFOs. And that's possible. Or maybe it's something else. Definitely. And one of my, and as you noticed, I try to I don't try to rail against anything. As I said before when we were doing HeartTalk, I'm not here to attack or expose anything, but to present the truth, yes. And the truth, is not out there. The truth is a person. And yeah, the evidence of what's happening will come forward, and everybody's going to know soon. But when they do know, they're going to wish they never did. Did you see that NASA report where the guy said, if you knew what I knew, you wouldn't sleep at night? So NASA.
No, who is that? That's
I posted it on my Facebook. You have to look at it.
Okay.
Go take a look at that.
All right.
And this was a statement by a NASA scientific head, and I went, "Whoa, that's the closest thing to revelation you're going to get from the government official. You're not going to have the president or anybody else doing that. I don't believe that." But he said it without saying it. He said, "If you knew what we knew, you wouldn't sleep at night." That's what he said.
Oh, yeah, okay, I did see that one.
That's the one. And that's the one I refer to. I go, and that's a revelation without saying it. That's being very point blank. It's about as close as a NASA person can get to saying, yes, they're out there. Yes, we deal with them, but no, it's not fun. We're protecting you. And that's really what he was saying. He said you wouldn't want to know this. And when the time comes that you do know, you're going to wish you hadn't known anything at all. And I agree. And that's why in revealing this that I'm doing now and letting it go public, it's really to say that the time comes when everybody that says people like us are crazy, they're going to think that this is the sanest thing that ever came out. Because it's going to get crazier, I think, a lot crazier. And science fiction movies are going to seem pale compared to what we're seeing in reality. And it'll cause people to die from the sight of this, whatever it is. And I don't want to know what it is that causes men's hearts to stop at the sight of whatever they're seeing. Because whatever it is, it has got to be extremely, extremely evil looking and frightening beyond what we have ever seen or known. And that is what that's what somewhat motivates me as I share to people. I don't push it. I'll contend with them, and I'll say, you can't say and you can't say I don't know, just because the absence of definition, the way you define truth, does not mean that what I am saying is not true. Because you're afraid to open up to look does not mean something is not true, because there's not your definition met to that regard. And I have to say to people, it's not because you don't believe, it's because you don't want to know that which you think does not exist, and you haven't investigated to find out yes or no. But you kind of go with the mainstream, oh, come on, no, that's conspiracy, or that's mythical, or that couldn't happen. Anytime you do that, what you're saying is, I have no interest in finding out if it's true or not. I'd rather stay right here where I don't know, because I'm a lot more comfortable with that than finding out. And there's a lot of good in that, too, because some people really can't handle the truth. And there's some things I know that I wish I didn't know. And I haven't gone into things that have been revealed to me. And as I told you before, there's some things you'll never know. I'm never going to talk about, which I agreed never to talk about, which I was instructed not to talk about. From the Word, that is, not from some voice in the sky or my mind making up things. So I won't talk about them. But my understanding is fairly clear. And as you've known me, when it comes to these things, I'm not equivocating. I don't say, well, I think so. Could be. I'm not quite sure. I'm pretty steadfast. And when I first met you, I started talking to you about it. Well, what do you think about this? And then later on, and it wasn't I don't think by my implication and pushing, but you ended up finding out these things and then being led to actually search and find the truth. Not like the X-Files, but the truth which is in the Savior, and all of these things that are happening in our government that they lie about. Because there's two things that build a government: lies and murder. Because that's what's happening around us right now as you see it. They say the death count around presidents and people like the Clintons and whether it's Bush, Clinton, everything. Now, a lot of these are not tied to them and are not of their quote-unquote, I ordered this hit. You will never find a person in power, in office, that you can tie to political hits. That just is not done. It's kind of like, if you look back to the ancients, the queen would say something, I wish these problems would just stop. And then her counselors would go, well, how can we stop it? Well, they try all the normal methods, but sometimes they go to extraordinary methods. For example, Kennedy, when he started George, the magazine, why in the world would you call a magazine George? Stifles me till I thought about it. Well, it has nothing to do with George Washington, I'll tell you that. Although that was implied. But I think there's a lot more to it involving his dad who was shot. But that's hearsay and speculation. But it might have been his implication in what he knew. I don't know. And it's funny how he died in a plane crash, though, not long after he started his magazine. And he was starting a run for political office. So, I really think that we're in some times, as I've discussed with you, with the final days. And these instances of strange things happening are happening all over the world to different people, and some who will not talk of them, and probably wisely so. Why am I given to talk about it? I prayed about it, this which you have spoken, and I was given a green light going, let's do this. In regards to...
Yeah, there's the, I was just looking at the video that you were talking about, the one that you posted, and Paul Hertz, director of Astrophysics Division of NASA.
Yeah.
Yeah, and what he says is, be careful what you wish for. If you guys even knew a fraction of the shit we do, you will never sleep again. I promise you that. Now, I think there's many people out there right now that don't sleep, that have a lot of trouble sleeping, because they're looking at some of these things that are going on and what this guy is talking about.
Well, that's why some of the military people have trouble. And when they get out, they're not normal, and you wonder, why is that guy so out? Well, because they've been dealing, if they're high level, they may be dealing with things that you and I would think were science fiction. I'll put it that way. I think that's equivalent to a lot of what's going on. And presidents and those in Congress are not clued in on that. Rightfully so, too. Rightfully so. Very few are. And if I had that knowledge, and I had some minimal stuff, but I know some things that from the Bible, and I've run across things that I don't need to say, oh, I'd like to know everything about it. Oh, people asking they think aliens are from other planets, and you get this Zeta Reticuli, and no, they're not from there. That is a misdirect. Yeah, they may have been there. Maybe they can probably travel there. Maybe they have been there and came from there, but they're from Earth, and they're not. They are not what they say they are. And so they're going to use that to subdue the foolish who believe that these things are ascended brothers. Well, yeah, they were angels, a lot of them, some of them, that were supposed to bring the glory to the Father for his work through his Son, who was called the light. And you see and when he said, and he created the light, and he saw that the light, and he separated the light from the dark. That's not talking about the earth. That was a representation of the flesh or the pre-incarnate Son, as I read it. And so I won't go into that much, but you see that and you go, wow. And each spirit was a spirit of light, created. When they fell, they were cursed, and they lost a lot of their abilities that they had when they were in their habitation in the heavens to give him the glory, and were following him and doing what was right. But afterwards, they still are very powerful, and they know the laws that created everything. They know the fabric of what they're dealing with. And so they can bend it and shape it and sometimes go into it if the Father allows them, and they can manifest things that we would be amazed at. And it would make them look like God himself almost, but they are not. And that's going to be the great delusion, is that the gods have come back, and they're teaching that in Ancient Aliens and so forth, that there is no God. Actually, it was all of these aliens that did that. Actually, fallen angels? No, they did not. That's part of the delusion. The greater delusion is going to be much more than that.
I guess it all goes back to the old question, well, are the aliens, are they alien, or are they demons?
Well, what are they going to turn? Well, actually, it's really complex in a sense, because there are fallen angels and the disembodied spirits of those that are accursed, called demons, that are under the influence of angels. And, like the giant of Kandahar. People say that's false. And Snopes
yeah, I saw that.
is the falsest thing in the world. It has nothing to do with the truth. And they say, oh, that didn't happen. No. Those soldiers that talk that day, no, they're not real. Oh, yeah. Soldiers are not given to flights of fancy.
Well, yeah,
If they deal with something.
but what facts do we have that, I mean, that these soldiers really saw this? Like, how public are they willing to actually go? Because that's
well, right
the only
now
way.
they're not going to go, show my face, and I'm going to go up there no more than I would if I had seen something like that. Especially if they said, you know what, don't talk to anybody about this. You cannot say anything. Do not. But yet they have spoken about it, and those who are in power know who was on that patrol should they do it. And but
Right,
the thing
so
is, we also know that if it's real, and I have I'm 50-50 on it. It could be a made-up story, a disinformation story, or it could be real. But the one thing that Snopes did is they revealed their belief. And they said, oh, they believe this Bible stuff relates to the ancient Nephilim. And I go, aha. They're fighting against the truth. So it lends credence to the fact this might really have happened. Plus, a lot of the ancient giants were red-haired, and it was a red-haired, red-bearded guy about 12 feet tall, which is about the size of the ancient Nephilim, who lived a good long while. They're not immortal, but they live a long time. And I think there's a shred of truth to this, and the military is forbidden, to reveal ops or what happens during an op or what happened. But they said they had to fire machine gun fire into his face. They were trying to body kill him, shoot him, and it didn't even affect him until they put the fire up on his head. They shot for 30 seconds, they said. Might have been shorter because every second seems forever when you're fighting something that you're terrified of.
That's how you kill a zombie.
They said about 30 seconds, and they just fired it into his face. And they said eventually he dropped, but he had killed one of the soldiers with a spear. So, you have a large, from what I understand, what I see from the story, and from what I've heard, I didn't hear about what he carried, but one of the soldiers said he was just huge, and had a spear and had a large squarish, it might have been a goldish shield. And so the giant of Kandahar, they said he had 6 toes, 6 fingers, or 6 fingers anyway. It didn't say toes. And so that would tie in to people like Goliath, who was the same. And so, yeah, I don't say that. But that was the implication. He was one of the giants of the Rephaim, the Nephilim, and I forgot the reference, but he was of gas, and it referenced his lineage a little bit, and he had brothers. And I'm assuming that if he was of the Nephilim, that he would have had 6 fingers, 6 toes. But that's what they testified about the giant of Kandahar. And I was just relating that to Goliath, but I didn't hear that he had 6 fingers and 6 toes. That was my supposition.
Right. Okay. So does Goliath, as far as him, like, does he, like, do we know, like, where he came from?
Well, it does reference that in Scripture, although I don't have it on my head, in my mind right now. And he was of Gath, and it mentioned he had brothers, and it mentioned a little bit of his lineage. And I would have to look that up and go back into that to get any relative information on that.
Right.
I hadn't read it recently.
But do you think there's any, I mean, is there anything in Scripture that talks about how Goliath might have came from the Nephilim or anything like that? Or
well, it is kind of an inferred thing that he was of the giants, and which in the record of the word it says that in the flood that he destroyed them, but yet they came again afterward. So that means that would include Goliath, yes. And Og of Bashan was a king who had a bed that was like 6 feet wide and a very big bed, and they explained that and how tall he was. And I think he was around 12 feet, maybe up to 15 feet tall.
Well, Yeah, the first thing wrong with this Snopes thing, I'm just looking at it now, what you posted, and they started off as false. Like, okay, it's false. Like, we've proven it false. Like,
Yeah, they
how
say
are
it's
you
false immediately.
how are you gonna prove that it's false? And then there's literally one, two, three, four, five paragraphs, and that's it. That's the whole thing.
But they don't give you any evidence that it's false.
No, they really don't, and
It's speculation.
right, which is the same as, well, if it's true, I mean, it's like, well, yeah, unless
They don't leave it as inconclusive, which they should have.
right,
That was a red flag to me.
yeah, for sure, yeah. So that was odd. I just thought that was weird that they would even.
And especially their biblical reference. Henry Snopes doesn't go into things like that.
Well, yeah, Snopes
And
is
I never
known
believed
for,
in Snopes at all anyway,
no.
to be honest. I thought it was a rather disingenuous way of manipulating the truth, in my opinion.
Well, yeah, any of these websites that are making money off of getting clickbait, that always makes me leery. Like, it's just
Oh yeah,
there's always
absolutely.
something going on with those. But um, yeah, I don't know. The whole giant thing, I have heard that. Had a couple people tell me about that. So that's interesting.
And it is something that ties to the Bible, and it's in the region where this was prolific, and it's come even to the United States. There's giants here, and they had Hebrew inscription that was in New Mexico, and looked that up. Hebrew inscriptions in New Mexico. So I think that Solomon came in through the Gulf of Mexico and was getting gold. They said he was getting 666 talents of gold a year. That's a lot of gold. And that means he had to have a big reach to get that much gold in a year. That's a lot. That is a huge, huge amount. If you look at what a talent of gold is and get 600 and something a year, wow, that's a lot. But the Bible is the prophecies are being played out. They're always being played out daily. And we see it now. And it says that Babylon will be judged. And the representation of Babylon, of course, was, guess what? The eagle. And guess what? Germany had on its flag. Wow. It was an eagle, a fascist type thing of total control of the populace. And today is the first time in real history that it can almost be tied together, and that kind of control can actually be exhibited and done and demonstrated. I like what Obama said, oh, you're going to give up your guns, you'll give them up. He knows something. Mm-hmm. He knows what's going to happen. Because if you have an extraterrestrial, quote unquote, like the Men in Black that one guy got a call from one time. And he said he'd like to talk to him about his sighting. He's a government official and wanted to talk with him. And he hung up and was going to turn on the light. Before he even got to the turning on the light, he was looking outside, and the guy was always walking up the steps. He said, wait a minute, I just hung up. And I took a penny out of his pocket and made it disappear. He said, nobody will ever see that penny again. Destroy all of that stuff that you see or have done, all your work and evidence. And the guy did it because of that one demonstration that he actually made a penny vanish. And he said, that has gone to where nobody will ever see it again. And when you're dealing with that, and when those get involved, well, will people give up their guns? Well, no, the guns will they'll be gone. They won't need to come and take them. They can come and bring somebody like that and that's done. And so I understand that.
Well, yeah, and, but I mean, if people knew that there was some alien force out there, my view right now would be that people are going to want guns. They're going to want more guns.
Well, the reality is guns don't affect them. Well, yes, there's some that can be affected with guns. However, the reality is, like Philip Snyder, he shot one of the Greys, and he said they can be killed. And yes, but when you get a full revelation, and they're given the ability, as in the last days, to rule, well, that's going to be a different story. Right now, they're hidden and restrained. And that day, they will not, and it will not be the same. And it's not going to be like it was with Phil Snyder. Now, Phil Snyder was a real revelator of some things that they did not want revealed, and he was, I think, executed, just like Forrestal, to silence him about the truth that he was bringing out. And you've seen his stories, I'm sure. And anybody that's been in the military and worked within that understands a lot more about government, about the UFO issue, and things like that. They have manuals covering this stuff. Now, I didn't get to handle one, but there were kind of implications of, not that it doesn't exist, but, it's not something that's going to have to, you can't talk about it except to one person, the CO, and then even the CO would get one, and it goes up and it says, this is it. It doesn't exist. They tightly control this, and that was from what I understand, an agreement that was made with, quote unquote, the Greys and the Nordics at the Holloman base with Eisenhower.
Which
they said that Revelation should come out in 2016
mm-hmm.
or 2017 or whatever, and that it should be done, or they would reveal. And I thought, I don't know if there's any truth to that. That's, I think, just a little talk to stir up the people to thinking, Revelation's going to get them hungry. In other words, get them hungry for Revelation, which I'm not. I prefer that they leave it alone and that they not reveal. I'd rather they didn't. Frankly, I'm not hungry for Revelation, although I know it's going to come. And it's going to be part of the delusion. But you had a question.
Yeah, but this is all leading towards the devil. I mean, everything that we're talking about here, it's all going towards that. It's going towards the revelation, towards the devil's
plan. And
the
thing is, that's going to be the revelation is going to be an operation. The revelation is going to be when they appear, and there appears to be war between us and them, quote unquote, as I hear. Because I've talked to, I had contact with somebody who was a friend of Werner von Braun's, very close friend, and I had actual contact with this person by the gift of God. And this person said to me, they're going to play that last card, in which it's the aliens are enemies. And then they're going to use that to begin the New World Order. That's the final card, this person said. That is the card that they will play to unify the world against this outside force that Reagan spoke of. He hinted at it. He was a Mason. It's something that they will come up with, and everybody will be willing to give up everything, guns. Oh yeah, just deliver us from this great threat. And it's coming from that one source that I discussed with you this last week. I went, oh my goodness, how does that fit together? It fits perfectly.
Well, with something like that, for everybody to give up everything, you would need some type of a Superman, some type of a superpowered person to say, look, I can take care of it. I will protect you. It is basically a false sense
that
of
is where it will
Jesus
come down.
Christ.
There will be.
It is the Antichrist.
And this person will say, I am him, and I will deliver you.
And all you have to do is give me.
You don't need guns.
You don't
need guns anymore.
Because I will.
And he will demonstrate it.
Yes.
Yeah.
He will demonstrate it. And that's in Revelation.
And that'll make it easy. Yeah. And that makes it easy. If you got somebody that really has, and he will be given authority to do this. So it'll be real, though it won't be real, if you know what I'm saying. It'll look to be.
Yes.
Yeah. It will be something that is effective.
Yes.
Meaning, he will be able to demonstrate power over any of the creatures that are coming against him because, well, he controls them.
Except for Christians. I mean, really.
Yeah,
except
exactly.
For...
Well, he's going to have to eventually eradicate them for the final judgment to come. The spirit will be removed, the restraining spirit. And once that's done, there is judgment that's going to be horrible. And anybody left then, it is not going to be good. Because the redemption will have occurred for all of his people. And then when the spirit is pulled away, that which restraineth is taken away, meaning the spirit, meaning all Christians are dead, and there's no voice going against them any longer. It's done as far as that moment. And then we are overcome. And then they go on and do what they are doing, whatever that is. But then the judgments begin. The seriousness gets really bad for the world then. Anybody who is alive in that time, if we are alive, cry out, because it's going to be, the revelation will be full then. And the full reality of what life has been and is will be open to all. And they're putting television shows that are giving implication to it, although it is hardly a description of what it will really be like. It'll be far worse and far more edgy. If you look at Nazi Germany when they were in power, it'll be kind of like that, except a little bit more, or communist Russia, where your neighbor's telling on you, one turning against the other for advantage. And people who were once believers all of a sudden go, hey, no more of that. This is it. And I'm praying not to be one of those. I'm going, Father, who am I? I'm no stronger than any other person. I have to depend on your salvation and your spirit, or else I'm not. There I am with them, except for your grace. And I pray that every day, as I tell you. And I pray that for you and your wife and family and all those who seek, that I know are seeking him and are part of his family. So these things are real, and those who are sticking their head deeper in the sand based on progress, really it's because they love their pleasure more than they love the truth. And they don't want the truth because it doesn't fit their paradigm of how the world should be. They prefer a world without the Bible, without religion, quote unquote, except the religion that's anti-Christ, which is the voice of power and supporting your government. The government becomes God, whichever government tends to go that way, and has to be judged. Yeah, and it started. It's nothing new. It started when Eve and Adam turned, and Adam knew better, and he did it anyway. He didn't consult with the Father on how to deal with Eve or anything, or bring a judgment and correct it. He just joined her. So nobody, and being in a perfected state, how did he make that decision? Well, it's because that's what he wanted, because of his wife. He chose his wife over the Almighty. So it has led to this. And people say, why does God do this? No, why have we done this? Is the question. Why did we rebel? Why are we resisting him? What's wrong with doing the right thing? Well, it's because we love our sin. We like it. It's not because sin is so great. It's because it's so easy compared to following the Father in a fallen state. And we have to be able to confess that we have no desire to follow him. But we like our sin, and we have to be able to be honest to the point of saying, Father, really, I don't want you. I really do like this sin, and I'd rather do that. But I know you are true. If you've been given the revelation, you're then responsible for dealing with the revelation that's given to you. Meaning you can say, hey, this is the correct thing. So I need to seek him as he commands. He says, from among them who seek me, them I choose as my sons. So if you've been the hardened, hateful person and hated him, there's still hope even for you. You could be like the thief on the cross. And he can. And it's his work that does it. It's not anything you do. It's not your thoughts that change. You don't do anything. When you are given this knowledge, you are given an understanding through the Word. It changes you. You don't change. It's a work of the Spirit. There's a lot of people that say, I chose him. That's a lie. And I'm frightened, and I've been praying about that. And the Father seems to indicate, yeah, this is probably the last day in which many will say, I'm of you. And he says, huh, that's strange. I never knew you. It's kind of like somebody that runs into somebody and says, I know that guy. And the guy says, who are you? You never knew me. You ran into me once and you think you know me and you're my friend. No, you're not. And that's kind of what it will be. And many people will be shocked to say that they chose the right way and followed the law, which won't be a lie. And they followed the commandments. They followed the New Testament. They did salvation work. Many people might have even actually been saved through a ministry, but yet you never knew. That's a scary thing. Frightening thing. Terribly frightening concerning the results that are going to be followed after that, because to whom much is given, much more is required.
That's right. All right, so in closing here, one of the things I would like to ask you is, we've covered a lot of stuff here tonight, just in our first show right here, but
and we've got more to go, I hope.
yeah, we do. We do. We have a lot more to talk about. This is really just a introduction of who you are, of things you've been through, and we haven't even gotten to your views on a lot of different topics that are very relevant, right? I mean, there's so many things. We haven't gotten to 911. We haven't gotten to the presidential elections, to Bohemian Grove. There's a lot of things that we haven't covered here.
And I'm going to try to relate it back through the Word in my experience. It doesn't mean it's gospel,
right?
But it will mean my experience through it. And I am not one who is alive, but my experience is something that can be shared and can be used by the Father in what way He will. I don't know what it'll be, and how long it'll be, and one day I'll die, and maybe He'll use it more importantly then. I don't know. I'm a sinner, and I'm not worthy of note except for the work that the good that the Father does, all the good that comes through my voice, what I say, what I do, and how I deal, because I have a lot of faults. As I used to say, my wife knows it, my friend Victoria knows it, you know some of mine. I mean, we all have them.
Yep, we all have them.
And yet, through that, the Father chooses, by the work of the Son, meaning the Spirit working in us, by that sacrifice, taking away the sin and give us His righteousness, which we do works that actually are His, worked in us by Him. So He's doing the work. We get blessed, and it is. And there are a lot more topics to cover, and I hope we can cover most of them. Mm-hmm. And I hope I get back to California pretty soon.
Please.
As I've wanted to do. I do have a son out there that does, and I've been in contact with him, but yet I do need to stop in. And I have another person, keep in prayer, that is professed, this young lady who has professed that she's going to wait for me and wants to be my wife. I went, what?
Wow.
Yeah. And I kind of went, at this late stage in life? And I don't say, and as I told them, I say, I don't say yes, but I don't say no, and I don't say it'll happen. Mm-hmm. We will see, is the wise word, because it's a young person. And as you know, I'm approaching 60. Let me tell you, they're approaching their 20s. And I'm going, what? And I feel like John Knox. He married a 17-year-old girl. No, I won't be marrying a 17-year-old. but be in prayer for me there.
All right, I will.
Because she's a wonderful woman, and I've known her a long time. And I went, not possible. And as of yet, I am committed to the single life, unless, as I've told everybody, if the Father shows me I need to do this or that, I will do it. So that's an aside. Mm-hmm. But and I'm praying for you and your wife, and praying for safety as we minister in these things, because I remember Mr. Cooper, how he ended up, Kennedy, and many others who were involved in truth, and even revealing it subtly, sometimes they take offense at it. And I am aware that if anybody took an interest to finish me, I say they could do it. The Father will hold me as long as He wants me, and when He's done, He can use my death as a proclamation of His glory and let me die, which I don't find that offensive or scary even, because I don't have much fear, as I've said before. Can people execute us for this? Yes. Should they? That's another thing, because touching a servant of the Most High, killing him, yeah, you can get away with it for a while, and maybe it won't be until after this earth is done that that judgment is executed. However, I wouldn't want to be in line of judgment for going against Him directly on anything at all. It's enough I'm a sinner, much less fighting Him by hurting one of His own, as I would say.
Mm-hmm. That's right. All right, so do you want to close us out with a prayer here? I mean, this is just, again, I hope this is just our first of many of these podcasts here, and I'm going to, try to hit you in the future. I'm going to try to hit you with as many questions, not because
Sure.
I don't believe what you're saying, but just because I want, iron sharpens iron, and we're just, as two Christians here talking.
Sure.
I want to do
and I'm
whatever.
open to that and scrutiny and conflict if somebody says, I don't believe you. Because truth can survive any test.
That's right.
Even if people decide not to believe it, like they did the Savior. If they can walk away from the Savior, then there's a darkness that can't be penetrated sometimes.
That's right.
And some people refuse because, like it says, they love their truth more than the truth. So I'm aware of this, and I'll be happy to close with prayer right now.
Please.
And Father, I'm nothing special, and we each, though, when we are used of you, you make us, as you say, gods. No, we're not God. Neither are we holier than anybody else. But you using us gives us a dispensation that people need to hear. They need to hear your truth. Thank you for Greg. And thank you for Dublin Beats. And I thank you for all that he has done in encouragement to me. Be with him, his wife, his family. And even though we are no longer working with the radio industry, that we came together and met each other, and I pray for them, Father, that you will heal that ministry and deliver them from false ways. In this, Father, we thank you that you are here, that your salvation is still working, and that you're on the move and working. Father, let these things please you, and let them be revealed to them who will be turned to you, so that you will be glorified by your work of your Spirit, of your word, and of your Son. We ask it in your name and in the name of the Son, for thy glory. Amen.